You're it.
That's it?
Are you feeling it?
So wait, we have new people, yes? Yes. So you've been listening to YouTube? You've been listening to Zenbitchslap, yes? You have? All right. Basically, that's the best of me. You're going to be disappointed. Yeah, just keep watching the YouTube. They work the best.
No snoring.
All right, hey, be quiet over there. Show some freaking respect for this message. So, well, the presentation is based on really what happened with me. You know, when I went to of course there is no me to what happened to, but when I went to satsangs myself, one of the things I noticed was, at least to me, there was an us and them even in the satsang. So the person was raised up a little bit, and then there was the crowd, and there was a talk on non-duality, which means not two, but there was like a two-ness there, yeah? And then there was a bigger two-ness because they thought they had it and other people that weren't there didn't have it. But they thought this person had it more than they had it, yeah? And so the illness for me was something that Raman Maharshi and other people point at, which is, it's not really the message that's important. It's how you hear the message, yeah? And this message isn't to you. It's never been to you. It's to bigger mind, let's say, if you want to call it being or mind. But there is an aspect of mind that's not defined and framed by a narration. So let's say I like to call the word raw mind, R-A-W mind. So the message is towards that, yeah? Because I spent a lot of time and I watched a lot of people talking to us about the message, but it doesn't go anywhere. So you have to talk to mind about you. Yeah? Because when mind gets the idea that it's not you, that's basically the end of what never even began, basically, yes? So the point is you're throwing the message over the one's head. So people a lot of times when I used to do talks in LA and stuff, they'd go to the guy that was running the door and they'd tell him, hey, everything this guy says goes over my head. So the guy asked me after a talk and he says, what do they mean by that? I said, well, the whole point is I am throwing it over their head because I've seen the uselessness of talking to you about mind. Because the you will frame what it's hearing, yeah? Just like it says in all these new studies, the observation distorts the observed. We cannot help that we are giving everything all the meaning it has. That's the functionality of what we are doing right now. Not what we are thinking of doing or what we think of what we've done, but the activity of what we are is giving the meaning to everything. Yeah? So if there's a message, the one who believes they're the hero of the message is going to be the dominant influence in the message. Yeah, so it's an old story. The first video we ever did at my friend's house, Jean-Claude, who's here today, the first one we ever did was this sheep and lion video, which was from an old Hindu, Indian story, and Papaji used to use it, I think. And I liked it very, very much about the, you know, the lioness and her cub, and then the lioness gets killed, and then the cub is roaming around, not really knowing what's going on, not even having a sense of what it actually is. And then it sees a flock of sheep, and it starts going towards the sheep. Now the sheep see it as a lion, so they're afraid at first, but then they realize it doesn't know it's a lion, basically. So they ingratiate it into the herd or the flock, and now the lion tries to become the best sheep it can be. Now it has a certain sense of irritability, restlessness, and discontent because it's not a sheep. You know, that's the basic dilemma. But what it does is it attempts to become like a sheep, and a good sheep, you know, and then, you know, it gets its hair curled and all this shit, sits around listening to people talk about who's going to be the next sweater and all like that. And it's not really that interested in it, but it doesn't know any better, really, has no idea. So then let's say it moves up the level of the hierarchy of the sheep herd, and then it becomes a big sheep, you know. And it marries a sheep, and they're having sort of strange-looking offspring, larger than usual, very undisciplined, and they're eating their siblings. But of course, they rationalize it, make up a story about it, so that it can keep So that everything, no matter how insane it looks, can be framed by, I'm a sheep. Yeah, that's the whole dilemma. Yeah, so no matter how many lion tendencies the lion kids would show, but they're a sheep acting like a lion. They can't get over the fact of the identification. This is what happens. This is what I saw. And it's never changed ever since, because I don't believe there's any point to go any farther unless this becomes clear, because if it isn't clear, you'll be looking from it instead of seeing it. When you're seeing it, it's obvious you're not that, and therefore, though the framing will be presented, the narration will be presented, you will not be contained in the narration, yeah? You will not be trying to get to be a better narration or to get out of the narration as the narration, because that's pointless. You're not going to get out of self as a self. You're not going to get out of being a sheep as a sheep. It's not going to happen. So here's that. So here's the young lion, and then suddenly an old lion comes into the field one day, and the flock of sheep, or the herd, whatever they call them, herd, I guess. They're not flying sheep, right? No, it's a herd. So they're chewing cud, and then suddenly the lion wants to eat, so it runs after the sheep, and so the sheep take off. And the lion, out of the corner of its eye, sees this other lion running, and it thinks it's joining the hunt, but then it realizes it's running with the sheep. So it veers off, grabs a lion, and then drags it over to this pond, this watering hole, doesn't say a thing, sticks their both heads out. The young lion sees its reflection, and it matches the other reflection of what he calls the lion. So then what happens? Nothing, in a sense, happens, because there was nothing to change, because it was a lion the whole time. Yeah. So it's an instant recognition, because it didn't have to become a lion, and it had never not become a lion. It was just identified as something else, and it was living from that something else, and in that something else there may be an insane idea that you can become like a lion, but framed as a sheep. I would say this is what happens with most of us in quote-unquote spirituality. We're trying to become spiritual, truly as, let's say, spirit, but we're identified as a thing, so now the thing is trying to become or gain some of the qualities which is its inherent nature. How's that going to work? It's impossible. You're not going to correct it through it. Yeah? You're not going to outdo it. You're not going to do yourself out of it. You're not going to think yourself out of it. So the problem is, like we say in recovery, it says it's like the unspoken stuff of recovery, of the 12 steps. And that is, you have to quit playing God. Yeah? All right, so let's say we're in an act of playing God right now. And then you hear this message that that which is playing God, has to quit playing God. What would that be if it tries to quit playing God, but playing God? If that which is playing God hears that it should not play God, if it tries not to play God, that's playing God. There's no way out. There's not one point it trying not to play God would be not playing God. It's going to go on and on and on and on and on. You can't get out of it because you're not truly in it. Yeah? You're not that which is playing God. That's how you get out of playing God. I mean, I try to get out of playing God as playing God. It fucking doesn't work. I tried to study the obsession with self from the idea of being a self. That was another form of obsession with self. I mean, you go to meetings now, all they talk about is self with the hopes of getting out of self, as a self. It's fundamentally flawed, and whatever you do can't correct it, because there's a sense of being the doer, which is the dilemma. So in all the actions to get out of it, it's the one that thinks it's in it that's trying to get out of it. If you were there with a Chinese little thumb thing, you know, and you've been trying to get out of it for years, and it hasn't worked, so because you're self-centered, you've been blaming yourself. I'm the only person who can't get out of one of these fucking things. But then you hear this message and you stop, let's say, because it halts you. There's a pause, and then suddenly the thumbs come right out. You get the exact wish you wanted to get, but not the way you wanted to get it. Because it's the way you wanted to get it. We want to be here to get the message. That's not the message. I just had this lady from a website that I did a talk for a couple months ago. And they called me and they go, well, a lot of people that heard you that time, they're really abuzz about the selfing, and they keep calling me saying, oh, I've been selfing all day. Now, I didn't want to go into it, but see, that's the selfing. The selfing is there's a feeling of being the one who's selfing. The selfing isn't the activity of the identification as a self. That's just a presentation by the mental state. The mental state is presenting a story to what we are. And it says the story is you're a thing. Yeah? So it's called the act of being identified as a self. It's an activity. Many of us can seem to be in it right now. It can appear to be true to us that we are the one that's doing the activity. In other words, I'm the self that's in the activity of being identified as a self. The feeling of being the self is the bondage, not the activity. So you can't wait, oh, I can't wait for the selfing to stop. The feeling of being the one who can't wait is the selfing. The activity of the bondage of self is an activity. That's all. The mind makes it seem to be so, or the mind sees it not to be so. That's the case. This whole place is seemingly so. And seemingly means it appears to be true or false to us. So somebody walks in here, and last week they were seemingly free of the bondage of self. Then they come in here today, nothing really changed except some time passed, and now they're seemingly bound to being a self. Were they bound or were they free? No. Because how can you be free from an imaginary idea? You're already free from the idea, unless you, as reality, believe it's true. As Jesus says, as you believe, so it is. There you go. Yeah. Once that's in place, then the trying to get out of that is being in it. So now you're trying to get, like we say in recovery is such a beautiful, if people didn't try to pigeonhole it just because it's only for addicts and alcoholics, it's one of the clearest fucking instruction books around, where it says, I don't know how they come up with this, self can't get out of self. Fucking unbelievable. That's the whole situation. So how can I get out of self? Well, if you have interest to get out of self, that's seemingly self trying to get out of self. So how can I have anything happen unless I have interest in it? The point is, it's loss of interest. Because this is already happening. You don't have to have interest for this to happen. What we are is already always happening. It doesn't get approached by interest. When you lose interest in a lot of activities, then it becomes obvious. But if you seek it, if you look for it, you're not going to see it. Because you are what you're looking for. So if you, as what you are, is in the pursuit of what it is, by looking for it, that's how it seemingly hides itself. So it's not interest. Oh, I'm really interested in this topic. I said, I'm very sorry to hear that. If you're very interested in this topic, you're going to come to 800 fucking satsang. But not as a joy, but as I'm going to get somewhere. I'm going to get something. What if something that's always available at all times, I can guarantee you it never has a desire to get anything. It's always here at all times. It's not searching for a culmination or a crescendo or a completion or a fulfillment. It's here really attempting to express all that. Basically, yeah. It can express it all by forgetting it, seemingly forgetting it, or seemingly being awake to it. So the basic state is we're all awake. I mean, just look at your day. You've been seeing with no fucking thought or effort, haven't you? If your eyes work, you're seeing. You can make a vow, I'm never going to see a fucking bird today. You may have seen a bird in the first minute. If your eyes are open, you look this way, you're going to see everything that's happening. There's no discrimination. There's no volition. Yeah? If I'm like this, and I look this way, I see you. Now I may have, the head may come up with an opinion. I didn't want to see her today, but it's based on that I saw her already, because I have no volition. Yeah? I'm going to hear whatever sound's happening. Sometimes we have talks at the old place in the city. There's Chinese karaoke playing. They're like evangelical, like rapture people in Chinese. It's going off in the other room. Hey, maybe it would be nice not to have it, but I'm hearing it because my ears are open. Yeah. So that which is the basis of our whole day has nothing to do with thought or effort. Is this your... The seeing is like the aperture is open wide, yeah? You're seeing, you're hearing, not you. They're seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching all day. And then after that, an idea arises that says, oh, I'm going to assume or presuppose that there was a you that was hearing everything, that there's a you that's seeing everything, that the you that's feeling everything. For what's for the purpose? The purpose is to neuter the constant example of being awake by having it claim to be you're the one who's awake, and then suddenly an impossibility seems possible. You can be unawake. And then you want to try to become awake as awakeness. It's like trying to add light onto light. All right, I got to get some fucking light and patch it onto light. You know what I mean? It's like insane in a way. But it makes total sense if one thing is in place. It makes total sense if a lion identified as a sheep gets dissatisfied with the sheep light, that it falls upon a book in some fucking sheep library and it's about how, you know, a lion, and it has pictures of great lions and no one's fucking with it, and so the young sheep goes, yeah, I'd love to have some of those qualities. And the next person who tried to make me a sweater, fucking whack it. Man, I would be at some major mojo. Yeah, it makes sense if you're a sheep. Really, it would make sense if you were what you think you are, a separate person that has needs that may not be met, that has love that's convoluted and maybe arthritic and can't be expressed clearly, or it's not getting what it wants, then of course it makes sense, yeah, I better start looking out for myself. I better start trying to get what I need. But who's writing the shopping list? Who's critiquing what you bring back? The head, completely. You can look for fucking anything other than what you are. You can look for a latte, you can look for a girlfriend, you can look for fucking this, for that, and you probably will be successful because there are girlfriends out there and boys and men. They will. Hopefully you'll meet one, you know. That all works, but you cannot apply that drive to what you are. You cannot find what you are. You cannot know what you are. You cannot study what you are. You can study what you're not. You can know what you're not, so that you will find out you're not that. And in knowing what you're not, you'll find out what you are. But trying to find out what you are from what you're not will not fucking work. This is a simple correction that never was needed to be corrected. It's just an impossibility we're entertaining to be so. And because we are the reality as an activity here, we are doing what we say in AA as an acronym of FEAR, which is false evidence is appearing real. So the narration is presenting a lot of false evidence about you, about others, about the day, about the world. And that false evidence can never rise to the level of being real, but it can appear to be real to what's real. Yeah? So I am reality, and the mental state constantly is presenting a story to replace the reality with a reality. And for this to take this to be a reality, it must be identified as the dreamt. It must be identified as something that can be perceived, that something can be touched and tasted, yes? And in that case, suddenly, false evidence starts to appear real, seemingly. And what happens if it gets corrected? I'm telling you, if it gets corrected, one of the first hits will be, it's always been this way. That nothing ever really fucking happened. I was never gone. I was never close or far. I was never lost or found. None of that was so. It's all based on an insane premise. When the insane premise is seen through, the whole house of cards falls because you're the foundation of the whole house of cards. Now the horse is in front of the card. Now you see blue is blue. Now you have no fucking metaphysical questions whatsoever. You've lost all interest in any kind of need to be liberated. Totally, completely. I don't have a spiritual bone in my body anymore. At all. Totally bleached, completely. I have no interest in it whatsoever. None. Period. Zilch. The interest is freed from the incredible chores it was constantly being sent out to do by the mental state. Constant obsession around the story of Paul. You don't realize how thick the horizontal download is. Yeah? Until you get pulled out of it. That's what's beautiful about recovery. We have 700 meetings a week. Yeah? And if you're by yourself, maybe you're not talking to anyone all day except yourself. And the ring is thick. You think you're seeing through it. It's translucent, but it's very dulling. Yeah? So you go to a meeting and you listen to other people. Finally. And in that hour, your attention is drawn out of that orbit. And what happens? You feel fucking available. You feel better. Not because anything happened or you did anything. Your fucking interest and attention, not yours, the interest and attention was pulled out and broke through the gravitational field that is always all about me, and it spread out. You were listening to others. You stopped looking out the window, and it's the dispersal of it. It's the unfocusedness of the interest and attention. That's the presence. It's undirected interest and attention is the presence. That's what you feel. Now you have plenty of interest and attention to make it through a fucking day. You probably don't have enough interest and attention to pay attention to every fucking thing you ever believed you did and all the things you may possibly do. Then your attention is when you get so dispersed and so watered down, yeah, that you don't even seem to be here. And then you're a fucking consumer to any fucking crazy idea of how I can get into the moment. But it's all premised on the insane idea you could be out of a moment. This correction is correcting something that never happened. It takes no time for the correction. You do not have to go back and make sure the non-existent thing has been extinguished. It never had any light to begin with. It was all a pale reflection of your own light. Someone, we saw something, a t-shirt saying, the crack in something lets the light in. No way, it lets the light out. We're hoping there's a light out there that's going to come in. It's just a boomerang of our own light. We're dreaming this whole fucking event. Not as Paul. I'm not sitting there going, I want a Cadillac Seville, and I'm going to create my own world. Good luck, man. Because there are going to be a lot of unintended consequences that could come when you get your dreams. So I'd much rather have it surrendered, yeah? And see this whole idea of, I heard the message, I'm the dreamer. It's still the dreamt, yes? If this claims it. See, there's beautiful knowledge of self, but self-knowledge will avail you nothing. But the same knowledge is, if it's of self, will avail you a huge amount. What's the difference? You and I. And then you're more of an individual when you're not an individual. And then there's finally acceptance that is had about this, because if you believe this is you, it's an urban renewal project the rest of your fucking life. You'll constantly be looking at it to see you know, going over, critiquing it constantly at the head. But what happens if you see you're not this? It's the greatest gift of all to the body. It can be a fucking body now, yeah? It can have desires, it can have this and that. Who gives a fuck? It's not burning houses down. I'm not really, I don't think there's tons of people concerned if I have 2 soy lattes today. I really don't. I don't think it's a huge deal. So the freedom is prior to whatever you think you're bound by, not after it. What's looking for freedom after it is that which believed it was bound. If you're not that which believed it was bound, the freedom is prior to the bondage, not after the bondage. You are not going to be liberated. You're going to be freed from the need to be liberated. So if you've been listening to the talks, selfing implies all the activities that support this one activity, and that is the act of being identified as a self. Yeah? It's not, the verb isn't not the act of being identified, and then there's a noun called self. It's a complete verb. There's the act of being identified as a self. It's an activity. Yeah? If it's an activity, just like, let's say you were you believed you were a runner to such an extent that all you did was run, and then someone would send you the message, hey bro, you can stop, and then you entertain, what, I can stop? Yeah, suddenly the possibility of stopping would occur, and it would stop, because it's an activity. If something was so, it's going to be very difficult to make it unso, but if it's an activity, and you get it, then it can stop. It's not like you're going to stop it, that would be part of the activity. But a disinterest in all the activities will, in a sense, bring a stop to it. It will still go on, but its culminating effect won't occur. You won't take yourself to be a self. Yeah. You won't look at selfing as you're doing it, or it's doing something to you. You won't see it that way. You'll see it as an activity. The activity of the act of being identified as a self. Now you can seemingly be believing that, which it could be appearing to be true to you right now, and then there would be a seeming sense of being the one who's doing the selfing. At the same moment, you can seem to be awake to you're not that, and it would have little effect. Because the activity doesn't have the ability to affect anything unless you believe it or not. It gets its ability to produce an effect by the cause, which is us. We're the reality. If you do not lend your attention and interest to it, it cannot project what it wants to project. And if it isn't about you, you'll get bored stiff of it quickly. Because it'll be like Stanley. Are you really going to sit at your home today in a beautiful sunny day thinking how different Stanley's life could have been if he would have made a left at that light 5 years ago? Maybe he would have met his wife and had some kids. You know, you're not going to fucking do that unless you're Stanley. The only thing that's causing you to be interested in what's going through your seeming head is it's about you. That's the only fucking thing. You're bored stiff. You're bored stiff listening to someone complain about what's not happening. I am. I'll do my laundry. I get these calls. It's like unbelievable. You know? 30 fucking minutes. We used to do a skit here. I love it. If I was a psychiatrist, if I went to psychiatry school, I would become my specialty would be dealing with what's not happening. It would only take a 3-month course. I get my certificate. People would come in expecting an hour session. They'd be done in a minute. They start yapping. I go, that's not happening. See you next week. What else? What more do you need to do than to see it's not happening? What more do you need to do to stop what's not happening? Just see it's not happening. Why aren't we relying on the one quality that is the highest quality that we exhibit, which is we're awake? We can be awake to that which is seemingly causing us to forget, yes? When you see it as an activity, the opportunity of it stopping becomes available. If you call it you, basically this is what happened with me in recovery. I saw the progression. I knew what was driving me crazy, which is what we call self, yeah? But I was identified as a self. And after about 9 years of recovery, studying it and sharing it with people and stuff like that, something happened, my head cracked open, and I looked at this sentence, and it was completely different download than all the other thousands of times I looked at it in the big book, which is being convinced, which means you're in the activity of convinced, yeah? You're in the activity of being convinced that self, the feeling or the sense of being the doer, the haver, the thinker, the long-lasting, independent, separate entity, that sense, yeah? That sense of proprietoriness, claiming, the one who's doing, yeah? Self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. And I had a quantum little 100-monkey leap, which is, we're the us, and there's this fucking thing, let's call it a parasite, a mental parasite, or a foreign installment, or like a space helmet, whatever, that we don't see, that's around our face. Whatever you want to call it, just to see it as other, yeah? Because if the dilemma, if the activity is being identified as what you're not, it's great to see that which you're identified as other, yeah? You see it as something other than you. That's it, yeah? Once I saw that, then it goes, all right, being convinced of that, we'll look at its common manifestations, and the whole resentment, the whole inventory process in AA is about looking at how self has defeated you in your life. And yet we keep calling its expressions our expressions. What can that be called other than the act of being identified as a self? If I am calling Stanley's expressions mine, I must be identified as Stanley. There you go. How long would it take to become unStanley if you're not Stanley? How much would you work on trying to get out of Stanley if you're not Stanley? No time at all. What would happen is if you lost interest in Stanley, that would be the escape from Stanley.
Yes.
How are you going to lose interest in something if you call it you? You're not. Have to see it as other. Because it cannot be, you cannot be interest getting out of interest. It can't. You can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha, as Huang Po says. You can't use light to seek light. You see? If light got interested in finding light, it would blind itself. If mind got interested in finding mind, it would be the greatest way to hide mind. If the Buddha got interested in seeking the Buddha, it would be the greatest way to hide the Buddha. It's when you lose interest in the Buddha, seeking the Buddha, you come to the conclusion, I'm not that, and then there's the Buddha. And the Buddha's always been there, always available at all times, with no requirement necessary. It will not take any second to pass for you to arrive at where you already are. Of course, the head's going to arise and say, this doesn't look like I thought it would. And there you go. If you believe that, you're in the activity of the bondage of self. If you don't believe it, you're not in the activity of the bondage of self. Are you free from the bondage of self at all times? Yes. Can you seem to not be free from it at many times? Yes. They're both going on. One is a fact, the other is a seemingly so. The only thing that can make it seem real is reality and your reality. There is no delusion, there is no illusion. You're either the deluding factor or you're not. You can go either way. But does it change any facts? No. You can act as if you're not awake as much as you fucking want. You'll never become unawake. You can't do yourself out of being, nor can you do yourself into being. You can't. Your behavior cannot do yourself out of being. Nor can your behavior do yourself into being. That's the great news. Yeah. What you're so sorely looking for is not based on you finding it. That's the beautiful fucking news. It has nothing to do with you. That's why most people are uninterested in it. Really. If this was a process-oriented meeting, and we gave out black belts and fucking blue belts, I'd have thousands of people here.
Is it a black belt?
No, there's no black belt. There's a noose I like to put on. Could be black at any time. But you see, if you come here 8 years ago or 8 years from now, you're going to get nothing. That's the whole point. If you keep getting nothing, it's going to dawn on you. That's everything, sooner or later. And you know what? I'm going to fucking outweight you. I am. My friend here knows I've been sharing this for fucking 20-something years. I'm not getting exhausted yet. I'll fucking outweight you. I'll be here offering nothing. Every 2 times a week. Millions of videos. Fucking, I'm gonna last even when I pass away. Thousands, hundreds of years. You'll see Paul Hedderman. If you want. Now I wouldn't recommend it, but it'll be available. And I've lost total interest in this message, I swear. But I never really, the interest I had, I never really had it. That which is speaking through me has absolutely no interest in it, in a sense. Has no interest in this whatsoever. It doesn't matter if I'm sick, it comes through. It doesn't matter if I'm doing great, it comes through. It doesn't matter if I got somewhere to go, it's coming through. It doesn't take me into consideration at all. And that's been the greatest thing for the fucking body, brain, dynamic here. This lack of interest. It's your vested interest which is the biggest deterrent. If you could call off the dogs, you'd fucking find that there's no need for a hunt. Yeah. So, all right. Any questions? No. Can we turn off that thing?